Does Genesis matter? Genesis is the foundation for the Christian faith. The events happen here affect everything. It can't be thrown out because then you have nothing to stand on, and you're just throwing out good principles, because then if you throw out Genesis, there's no reason to believe all the other things. In fact, the New Testament writers took Genesis literally and considered events happening in Genesis real events, real people. And Romans, I'll read a passage where you can see Paul had a literal interpretation of Genesis. And I'll read just a passage. When Adam sin entered the whole world. Adam's sin brought death, so death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. Yes, people sinned even before the law was given, but it was not counted as sin because there was not yet any law to break. Still everyone died, from who you can see Paul had a literal interpretation of Genesis. And I'll read just a passage. When Adam sin entered the whole world. Adam's sin brought death, so death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. Yes, people sinned even before the law was given, but it was not counted as sin because there was not yet any law to break. Still everyone died, from who did not disobey a explicit commandment of God as Adam did. Now, Adam is a symbol, a representation of Christ, who was yet to come. But there is a great difference between Adam's sin and God's gracious gift. For the sin of this one man, Adam, brought death to many. But even great is God's wonderful grace and his gift of forgiveness to many through this other man, Jesus Christ. And the result God's gracious gift is given is very different from the result of that one man's sin. For Adam's sin led to condemnation, but God's free gift led our being made right with God, even though we are guilty of many sins. For the sins of one man, Adam, caused death to rule over many, but even greater is God's wonderful grace and his gift of righteousness. For all who receive it and will live in triumphant over sin and death through this one man, Jesus Christ. And also, if you cannot believe the accounts in Genesis, then how can you believe the other accounts? Because there's quite other crazy events that God does, because God is powerful. He does things that just cannot happen in the natural world. And the reason why he does that is to bring glory to himself. God wants himself to be known. Plus, the genre of the biblical book of Genesis is historical. There's historical narratives, I mean, not historical narratives, but genres in the Bible that help, or we arrange these to help our interpretation. You've got poetry, historical narrative, prophecy, wisdom. Those are just a few of the genres in the Bible. If you were taking a Bible class, you would go over them. And also you can see that God wrote in a very clear way. When God wants something to kill something, he uses off the wall almost imagery, like in the prophetic books. You can see the prophecy. He uses this imagery, like say in Daniel's dream, when like say think it was... Okay, Daniel, I can't believe I forgot the name of the... A Babylonian king, I forgot the name. I should remember it. He talked about the tree and how it was being cut down and stuff, and that's how God portrays a message. That is, God does not use metaphors. Not to say that God uses metaphors is calling him very deceptive. God is not deceptive. God is very clear in his messages. It's us who don't understand them. Plus, but God created in such a way that will bring him the least glory and the most glory. Clearly, the Genesis account taken literally acts in a way that makes his presence known. Also, this book, you should not add stuff to it by changing the interpretation of Genesis from other facts. You're changing how you interpret this book. You shouldn't add stuff. You should, if I expect someone to read the Bible, I expect them to read it. And they had no other knowledge. I can bet you they're going to have a literal interpretation of Genesis. And I can't stress that Genesis is the foundation of our faith. If you make Genesis into something that it's not, like say allegory, then you have nothing to stand on. That's why I think it's extremely, extremely important to have a literal interpretation of Genesis.